to the Be Ninjas podcast, where you get an all-access pass to see what happens behind the closed doors of a fast-growing global bookkeeping and financial reporting business.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Be Ninjas podcast. On today's show, I'm joined by Anf, who has actually recently become a member of the Be Ninjas team. Welcome, Anf.
Glad to be here, Meryl.
And you're doing this interview from the Gold Coast, where I'm located as well. And are you enjoying your time on the Gold Coast so far? I know it's pretty hot at the moment.
Yes, I am. It's quite a beautiful stretch of Australian coast. And there's we've been exploring Burleigh, which is where our office is and around that area. So my wife and I are definitely enjoying our initial impressions of the Gold Coast.
That's good to hear. We're yet to get you out in the surf. It's a Be Ninjas tradition to at least try and convince new team members to go for a surf. So we'll check back in with you in 6 months and see if we've got you out there.
Yeah, I'm keen for it. But like I said to you earlier, I'm not the best swimmer. So let's keep away from the sharks.
So I was really excited to do this particular episode. You've previously run businesses yourself. And the theme that I wanted to cover in today's episode was the move from entrepreneur and running your own business to intrapreneur, which is coming into the Be Ninjas team, but in applying those entrepreneurial skills that you've built through running your own businesses, and what does it actually mean to be an intrapreneur, and how does that look for Be Ninjas. But before we dive into that, let's get your backstory. So can you give our audience just a little bit, some background about what you've been working on over the last 5 years?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, if we go back 5 years from today, I actually had a business before, 5 years ago. I was running a Facebook ad agency with a co-founder at the time. And we ran that for a couple of years. Didn't make any money from it. It was one of these situations where, pretty common, I guess, but not spoken about so much, is the business itself was generating revenue, but the owners were not pulling a salary from it. Okay, so after a couple of years going hard at that, we just made the call to say, look, we really need to work out how we can do this better. I made a decision at that point in time to just split, with my co-founder, and we were headed in different directions anyway. Like, I'm more of a social entrepreneur, I suppose, and he had different motivations and goals, and life goals. All right, so I wanted to travel more, and that's essentially it's what I did. I actually took off a couple of months and went overseas. I attended a huge conference in Portland, Oregon in the US called World Domination Summit. And that kind of re-sparked my desire to give entrepreneurship another go, but I wanted to do it a different way. And when I came back to Oz after that trip, I came back with a mindset of entering an organization and essentially what you're calling an entrepreneur, doing that, right? So I actually joined Australia's largest co-working communities at the time, Hub Australia, and then went on joined that team as their marketing lead, and managed campaigns across the 3 locations they had across Australia, and did that for a couple of years. And before leaving that role and then starting what you know as Simple Creative Marketing, which is a content marketing agency, creating blog posts and long-form content and that kind of stuff. And then that led to, after doing that for about a year, and that started off with I know you did a previous episode on the 7-day startup methodology and how Be Ninjas started off with a 7-day startup. SCM was started the same way. All right, 7 days, let's see if we can get a customer. I was able to get a couple, and you were one of the first. And then that led to 12 months or about 18 months later, me launching a virtual CMO. For those who are listening, who don't know what that means, it's a virtual chief marketing officer service where I essentially was the outsourced marketing manager for various organizations or small businesses. And I did that for another 18 or probably another 12 months before deciding to give it a break. It wasn't working. The model wasn't working because I wasn't one of these digital nomads floating around, the earth with my wife. And it was a bit of a challenge to make that particular service work. So I cut that out of the business, focused on content with a couple of core clients, and then made a decision end of last year to sort of with my wife to settle down in one location. And then really just have a go at working with an organization that, again, I resonated with, had similar values, had similar goals, and the opportunity to work with Vinny just came up, which was just brilliant because we wanted to be, on a personal level, we wanted to be close to the water, to the beach. And then on a professional level, just a great organization. I've worked with you and the other team members before. I know all about the organization and have just admired and respected the journey, and really I could see that I could add value to the organization in its next iteration.
And what was your thought process when you were making the decision to change direction and wind back the virtual CMO service, and then to ultimately look for a role with a company like Being Ninjas?
Right. So, that decision was quite tough because the CMO service was actually the most profitable service in the business at the time. And my thought process was, look, a couple of things needed to happen. One was myself and my wife, we were looking for stability in terms of our lifestyle. And we had been traveling for 18 months. So we're at a point where we wanted to, and I hear this a lot with nomads, is that there's a stage where you kind of hit a wall and you realize I need to be stable financially, emotionally, in terms of your social network as well. And we just wanted to be, and also in terms of your work, your work or your vocation. And so what I was looking for was an opportunity to leverage all these skills and the network that I had built over the last few years within an organization with aligned values and a similar mission, where I could actually lend my skills and my ideas to that organization. And that was the kind of the beginning, I guess, of my search for such an opportunity. And thankfully, the Being Ninjas opportunity really came up within a few weeks of me getting very clear on what type of organization I wanted to work with.
And something that really stands out to me in hearing you describe that journey is that you must create space in your week to have time for self-reflection, because I know of many different business owners who go for years without really stopping to reflect and think about what they want or what their why is and what brings meaning to their life. And so it sounds like you've been constantly reflecting and then adjusting as you live. And I was wondering how you learned that skill, or if there's any frameworks that you're using or ways to create space in your week to create that time to reflect.
Yeah, that's a great question, Meryl. So I'm quite introspective, and I've developed that. I'd probably go back even when I was working in corporate, and the way that I learned to manage my stress from the job. And, I was doing up to 60 hours a week back then. And one way was I actually got into sort of spiritual, I'll call them spiritual practices like meditation and yoga. A few years back, as a sort of birthday present to myself or a gift, I went and did a 10-day silent Vipassana retreat, which is 10 days of silent meditation, for those who don't know what that means. And then I just continued to practice. I don't do hour-long meditations or anything like that. It just really comes down to going into nature. Could be a park, it could be a beach, whatever it may be. And just, giving myself some, like you said, what you call breathing space and headspace. I've was referred, one of my mentors recommended an app to me, which is called One Giant Mind, which is a great meditation app. For a lot of people, it's hard to access meditation as a practice because they don't like sitting down or they don't understand what it's all about. And One Giant Mind just really breaks it down in a really nice and concise way. And it kind of removes the woo-woo from it and gives you the science behind it, which I like.
Yeah, me too.
And that worked for me. Yeah. And you start off with a 12-day meditation challenge, if you will, and it's like 15 minutes per day for 12 days. And once you've done that much, it's easy for you to keep going.
Yeah. Good. We'll jump back into the story. So you'd gone through this thought process and identified that you wanted some more stability. You wanted to to be in the one place with your wife, and then you started the search for a role. And so did you have some criteria about the kind of role that you were looking for? And can you talk through what that process looked like in terms of defining what you wanted and then ultimately ending up with the job at B Ninjas?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things you learn as an entrepreneur is that for me, I learned this is very early on. I'll go back maybe 7 or 8 years when I was living in Canada on my own. I learned that it's very hard for me to work in a structure that has authority where I'm not the authority. Which might not sound good to anyone who's like a superior, but what that actually means is I work best when I'm in an environment where I'm actually given the opportunity to make key decisions, right? And at the same time, that comes with responsibility. So if you're going to make decisions, you have to also take the consequences if you can't deliver on those things, right? So for me, it was a case of just sitting down and going, okay, so what are our life goals, for the next 5, even the next like couple of years, and what and I had this couple conversations with my wife around this. We had a sort of one day in Japan where we took out all the post-it notes and just really had 30 different post-it notes and ideas on what we were trying to build together in terms of our life. And then I always had the sort of foresight, I guess, to that whatever I was doing for my career had to help support that vision, right? And so in terms of what company I wanted to work with, I looked at, okay, I needed it to be flexible in terms of the way that we work, and that means location independent, but also time, so not necessarily tied to the 9 to 5 rigid structure that larger organizations might have, because I think I've learned when I'm more productive, like I'm a sort of, my creativity is at its peak before lunchtime. So I'm an early morning riser. I get up around 5 a.m. most days. And then if I'm working through to about midday, 1 p.m., then that's sort of when I can get into my creative states. And then sort of afternoon, I'm more productive with more like admin type roles. And there's actually a book and some research out around this concept in identifying when is the best time for individuals to be working and being creative versus being administrative. And it's different for every individual. So that was one thing. Obviously, the pay rate had to meet certain requirements. I also looked at it from a ability and skill set. So what can I bring to the organization? What can I add? Where can I add value? And one of my key values is always learning, always growing, which is also B Ninja's value. And that's was very important to me because I know that I have some gaps in my knowledge and my skill set. And this is the hardest thing definitely with a marketing role, because marketing is such a broad, world to be in. And there's so many skill sets that you can learn. And we talked about this, when I was going for my interview, is there's so much you can learn. Like I could literally spend a year just learning SEO, right? But is that what we need right now? And it's something that I'm willing to invest in and develop as a skill set, with the understanding that there are other areas that are more pertinent to the business that I can support right now, right? And so they were kind of the key criteria for the situation I wanted to work within. And I realized that there wasn't going to be, on the job hunt phase, it wasn't going to be easy, like, let's just find roles that fit that criteria, because a lot of these roles are not defined in that way. In many cases, you have to negotiate and you have to create the roles with the organization that you work with. So I was actually looking more from a strategic point of view at, was the organization willing to sort of evolve with me, with the understanding that evolution would actually help the organization in the long term.
Yeah, great answer. So if another business owner was listening to this podcast and they were going through a hiring process and they had a range of candidates, and some have run their own business before and have some of that entrepreneurial spirit, but for personal reasons, they've decided that it aligns with their personal goals to go and work for another business. What would you say would be some of the advantages, or why would a small business owner hire someone that has those entrepreneurial capabilities?
So this is a great question, and it relates to two things. It relates to the capabilities that the organization is looking for to bring in-house, and it also relates to the risk profile of the organization itself, right? Because when you're hiring an entrepreneur, I know we had this conversation in our interview, like hiring an entrepreneur inherently brings risk with it, because entrepreneurs have, whether it's side hustles or ideas and things they want to explore, there's always like 10 ideas on in their mind that they could explore. And so the way that I would go about it, working with an organization, if I were to, to advise here, would to say, look, you really need to be clear on your own culture as an organization and what you're trying to develop, and the skill sets that you want to bring in house, and the skill sets that you can actually, help, I guess, evolve or develop within your organization. Now, what entrepreneurs bring with them, I'm going to sort of stereotype here, but it's going to be on a case-by-case basis, but most of them will have some kind of proactiveness, right? Like you cannot run your own business and not be a leader of some kind, right? So, you have to develop the ability to, run multiple projects at the same time or wear different hats, right? So when I was running in my own business, I had to be the marketer, the sales guy, the customer service guy, the tech person, anything you can name. I was the bookkeeper at some stages before I brought my much more, smarter wife into the business. And learning how to delegate and systemize and automate. All these skills are, skills that entrepreneurs are forced to learn, because when you're running your own business, you get to really identify what it means to run a business. Like I'm thinking when I started, I'll just write content because I'm a writer and that's something I do well. But then I quickly realized, oh no, if I don't go out and generate leads and sales and have sales conversations and learn how to do that well, then I'm never going to have the opportunity to write. So organizations need to understand that, and the other part I mentioned earlier was I was always networking and building my network, right? And so, not only bringing someone who has these leadership skills and sales skills and marketing skills and whatever it may be, you're also bringing in their ability to network, build associations, build credibility, create case studies, whatever it may be, and they're sort of these, I'll call them intangibles, that you're not always looking for when you're hiring, because typically you hire on skill set and, project goals, like what you're trying to achieve within your projects. But then if you sort of consider there's other benefits of having the entrepreneur, then that can really work well for your organization.
And would you say there's any risks, or how would you describe the risks associated with hiring an entrepreneur, and what would be some potential ways to mitigate those? And I'm probably putting you on the spot here because these are things that I had to think through as I was going down this path, but it would be interesting to hear your perspective on that too.
Yeah, so I'll give you the perspective from the intrapreneur, right? So the risk is always, okay, maybe there's a better project that comes along and they kind of jump ship, right? And that's I think that's the biggest risk you're going to have with hiring an entrepreneur or someone with that kind of spirit. The way you mitigate that risk is you identify where their interests are and the skills that they want to develop, and then you look at opportunities for you. Does it make sense for you to help develop that skill set, because it actually helps your business, right? And I mentioned SEO as one skill set that we're looking at, for developing, for me, for example, within Bean Ninjas, because, I learned that skill set, Bean Ninjas benefits from it, right? So other organizations can look at that as well. It's all about, so there's something that's interesting that I learned over the years is sort of this mindset between what an employee is, what a manager is, and then what, within an organization, and then what an entrepreneur is. And there's this big myth out there that says entrepreneur is something different. And I actually would argue, now that I've been through, sort of a decade of this, I would argue that they're actually not different at all. And really as an individual, you're always looking out for yourself first, because you need to identify situations for yourself where you can, grow your life, grow your wealth, if that's what it is that you're looking for, or your lifestyle, or your marriage, or whatever it may be, your personal circumstances, but also your mission in life and your values and your purpose and why you're here, right? So a big part of really why I joined Bean Ninjas was because of its mission statement. Right. And we're here to, help business owners or businesses develop freedom, whether it's time, money, location, whatever it may be. And that's a huge core value I've always had since I was a little baby, right? And put to like a lot of entrepreneurs, that's what they're looking for, right? So if and I think organizations are cluing onto this now, because I worked for a co-working community for a couple of years, and we always had this situation where there were people who had left corporate jobs to come in and try and start their own startups, their own businesses. And then, they'd give it a good 12 months or 18 months. And if they were able to make it, hit a certain milestone and made, were able to generate profit or whatever it was, they would continue. Otherwise, what would typically happen is they'd go back and work within another organization. And they kept on, like, there was a cycle. Like every 2 years, you'd see these people bounce in and out of organizations and working for themselves. And it's actually becoming more and more common now with, the rise of the freelance economy and digital, working and all these things that are happening now, these trends. So it's actually, and companies, it started back with IBM, 10 years ago. They already sort of saw this coming, and they actually put, percentage of their workforce, they gave them laptops and mobile phones and said, hey, go work from home for a while. And so this is, there's some research that shows that by 2020 or whatever, or in the next 5 years, we're looking at something like 40 or 50% of the economy will be remote working. So whether that's for themselves or within an organization, that's just where we're headed.
And I think you've really summed that up nicely, to the fact that they may move in and out. They may run their own business and then come back to an organization. And there's a lot of advantages as a business owner to have people with the skills of running their own business who have had to deal with sales and really learn to prioritize their work and figure out what's important. And there might be some risks associated with that one day they might want to go back and run their business. And that's fine too. And when we were going through this interview process, part of me getting comfortable, I like working with entrepreneurial people. So we don't hire everyone with every role with entrepreneurial spirit, but we definitely do hire some people like that at Be Ninjas. And for me, it was about getting comfortable to understand your why. So understanding what you wanted out of life and what your goals were, and then making sure that the role at Be Ninjas aligned with that, because then I could see that it would make sense for you to stick around for whatever period of time, the 12 months plus, to build the role, knowing that one day you probably will run another business of your own, but we will have had that time together where you built your skills and enjoyed being part of the Be Ninjas team. And we've also benefited from having someone that thinks like an entrepreneur thinks, looking for opportunities and innovating. And maybe you wouldn't have conversations like this on a podcast normally, especially between someone that has joined the team. But I think it's actually quite interesting to share how we went about that process.
Yeah, I agree. I think, another sort of what came to my mind just now is just project management. Like, that's just, by the definition, that's what you do. Maybe that's not something you consider a skill set of an entrepreneur, but you're required to do that. And so I'm already seeing, like, that's something that I jump in. It's not something you need to train me on, like, it's something that I already bring with me because of all the years I've been doing this. And that's really, like, podcasting was something I was already doing before we came into this. So there was already benefits of bringing someone in who had those skills and were, is aware of trends and what's happening outside. Another thing I love about Be Ninjas is, like, having our operations manager Fiona come back, because she had a baby, last year, and she went away. And this is a huge opportunity for a lot of employers right now, is that mothers who go away and have babies and they've got the maternity leave, and they come back and they're looking to come back into organizations that support them in where they are in their life. And I think, the more that organizations are able to do that, the better they'll be able to work with those mothers, because those mothers want freedom of time to take care of their kids and take the kids to school and those kind of things too. So there's a huge opportunity there, and I see that, and I love that Be Ninjas embraces that.
You're right. Actually, we've got 3 team members with babies that are under 1 year old at the moment. And that means we just need to be smarter about what kind of work we give them, because they're less available to have meetings at a set time, and it's harder for them to meet specific tight deadlines. But that just means we adapt the type of work that they have, especially during those months when the baby's really young, and then have the ability just to gradually ramp up hours as it fits in with their life. So I think we're lucky that our business is at a stage where we are able to offer that kind of flexibility.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I look to sort of the predecessors and the ones who've been doing it for a long time, like Basecamp, these companies that are out there, Buffer, who've had just fully remote teams. So the model is proven, and it's about, like you're saying, as an organization, identifying how we can be flexible to accommodate different types of working and different lifestyle requirements and whatnot.
So we went through the interview process, you got the job, and this has been your first week. So what are some of the things that how did you approach your first week at Bean Ninjas? What are some of the things you've been working on, and how did you approach it?
Yeah, so essentially the way I sort of viewed the first week was to really immerse myself into understanding where the business currently sits, in terms of its, definitely from a marketing sort of hat on, because that's the role that I'm sort of hired to be in. But more and more I'm seeing that the role that and this is my philosophy around marketing. Marketing touches all aspects of your business. Everything from your invoices, your invoicing systems, to your onboarding process. When you've got a new client signed on, to your customer experience surveys and things like that. And I think that's really, this week has been more about understanding what's already been put in place since I last worked with the team. Going back many months ago, to where it is now, and then looking at what are our KPIs and goals across the business for 2019 and onward. And really this week has been more of a sort of researching and also connecting with the team, with individual team members that I'll be spending more time with, and you're getting to know them as individuals and colleagues, rather than just sort of straight into, hey, here are the tasks you need to be doing. We've had a bit of both, which has really been nice.
Yeah, and it is a slightly different dynamic being a team member. I mean, you've worked with Bean Ninjas for a couple of years now, and you already know some of the team, but I imagine it is a slightly different dynamic when you're in the office and learning all about different systems. I know you already were familiar with some of them prior to joining the team. So it's actually fantastic that you are on the Gold Coast and we're able to spend that time together too.
And I think that was a smart decision on your part, because I think to have the trainee come in and commit 3 months to being on site, to actually immerse in the culture, meet the team, enjoy the location, because definitely this is a pristine location to be in. And I think that's important for any organizations who are thinking about sort of doing the remote thing, is you want to have a time period, whether it's the first 30 days or the first 3 months, where you actually have, if you can, have the team member come in and be part of an office space or a co-working space of some sort, where you're actually working closely.
Especially with a role like this, because we had a particular job description, but I knew this is the first marketing team member that Bean Ninjas is hiring, the first internal role, and it's probably going to evolve. And I've seen that even in this first week of working together, that the role will evolve. And as you said, it touches many different areas of the business. And with a role that's so fluid like that, I think having that face-to-face time is very important. Whereas with as an example, the accounting side of our business, we've hired lots of accountants. We've worked with lots of accountants. And so those job descriptions are a lot more structured. So we can probably get away with not having the face-to-face time up front. We definitely value meeting together when we can. But I knew that with this role and the potential for it to evolve in many different directions, that it would be important. So
absolutely.
Well, it's great to have you on the team. Welcome. And thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. Did you have any parting words or words of wisdom that you wanted to leave with the audience before we wrap up?
First of all, thank you for welcoming me to the team. It's been an awesome experience, and I look forward to contributing over the next few weeks, months, and years. Really awesome. Love connecting with everybody. In terms of parting wisdom, if you're either, I think for the entrepreneurs listening, I'd reconsider your definition of what an entrepreneur is, and getting caught on the mindset. And I had this for a number of years, that to work for someone else is like a failure. Like to give up your business and go and work for someone else is. I actually challenge that big time now, because the way I see it is, whether you're working in your own business or someone else's business, you're still working for yourself. and it's really just looking at what's the best situation and opportunity for you to achieve your personal and your professional goals, right? And as we've discussed in this interview, you'll transition between many situations throughout your life. So now for the employers listening, I'd really look at, what kind of, what skill sets you need in your organization. If you need leadership, if you need project management, you need people who can network, who can sell, then definitely, consider intrapreneurs and what that can mean for your organization, and really look at the biggest thing would be identifying your own why as an organization, and your culture and your values, because what's going to sell someone to come and join your organization is you being clear on what those things are.
Great wrap up. Thanks so much, Anf, and I'll see you in the office tomorrow.